The invisible barrier. The 53rd floor of the Horizon Tower existed in a perpetual hush. Not silence. The gentle hum of advanced technology and hushed conversations provided a constant backdrop, but a cultivated quietude that reflected its occupant's nature. Dominic Reed preferred it this way, sound dampened like the emotions he'd learned to suppress decades ago. "The Henderson proposal is ready for your signature," Ophelia Winters said, placing the tablet on his desk with practiced precision. "And Governor Franklin's office called again about the tech education initiative." Dominic glanced up briefly. "Tell them I'm considering it," he replied, the same answer he'd given for weeks. He returned to the code on his screen, fingers moving in quick, deliberate keystrokes. Ophelia nodded, though he didn't see it. After 4 years as executive assistant to one of the world's most brilliant and most guarded tech innovators, she'd grown accustomed to his abrupt manner. Some called it coldness, but Ophelia recognized it as focus. The single-minded concentration that had transformed Dominic from an orphan prodigy to the founder of Horizon Innovations, the company reshaping how humanity interacted with technology. "Will you be attending the charity dinner tonight?" she asked, knowing the answer before he spoke. "Send Vivian from PR, the usual donation plus 10%. He didn't look up. "Have Trevor bring the car at 7. I'll be working late." As she turned to leave, Dominic added, "Coffee, the Ethiopian blend." It wasn't a request, but a statement of fact. In 7 minutes, Ophelia would return with his preferred afternoon coffee, prepared exactly as he liked it. Their routine, perfected over years, required minimal words. Outside his office, Ophelia settled behind her desk and released a small sigh. She sent the required messages, rearranged his schedule, and prepared his coffee with precise movements that required no thought, leaving her mind free to wander to the sketches hidden in her apartment. Architectural designs she'd once dreamed of bringing to life before pragmatism led her to this career. "How's the glacier today?" asked Trevor Marshall, Dominic's driver and head of security, approaching her desk with a sympathetic smile. "Productive," Ophelia replied with the professional smile she'd perfected, "and focused." "So the usual," Trevor chuckled. "Sometimes I wonder if he notices any of us are actual people." Ophelia's eyes flicked toward Dominic's office. Through the glass walls, she could see him entirely absorbed in his work, his dark hair slightly disheveled, his posture rigid with concentration. Few people understood what Ophelia had learned, that Dominic's apparent coldness masked something else entirely. "He notices more than people think," she said quietly. "He just keeps his distance." What she didn't say was how she'd observed the small details others missed. How he anonymously funded medical research after his former housekeeper's granddaughter was diagnosed with a rare disease. How he ensured every employee had comprehensive benefits after overhearing a junior programmer's concerns about healthcare costs. How his innovations always centered on genuine human needs rather than mere profit. The invisible barrier Dominic maintained wasn't coldness but protection. For himself or others, Ophelia wasn't certain. As she carried his coffee toward his office, she wondered, as she occasionally did, what might exist beyond that carefully constructed wall. But such thoughts were unprofessional, and Ophelia prided herself on professionalism above all else. She placed the coffee precisely 3 inches from his right hand and turned to leave. "Ophelia," Dominic said suddenly, his voice making her pause. "Thank you." The words were simple, but rare enough to surprise her. She turned back, but he had already returned to his work. The moment of connection closed as quickly as it had opened. Just another day at Horizon Tower, where emotional distance was measured in careful words and averted gazes, and some barriers seemed permanent by design. Unexpected Sacrifice, the Tokyo Metropolitan Convention Center, blazed with light against the night sky. Inside, under crystal chandeliers, the tech elite gathered for Horizon's most ambitious product launch yet. Dominic paced in a private room adjacent to the main hall, reviewing his presentation one final time. 3 minutes, Mr. Reed, Ophelia said, entering with a tablet displaying the night's schedule. She wore a simple midnight blue dress, professional yet elegant, her usual practical ponytail replaced by a sleek updo that Dominic found himself noticing despite his pre-presentation focus. Any word from the development team? He asked, adjusting his cufflinks, platinum with subtle circuit board etchings. A gift from the board after Horizon's IPO. Dr. Yamamoto confirms the neural interface is functioning perfectly in all demonstrations. The Japanese investors are particularly impressed with the medical applications. Ophelia handed him a small earpiece. I'll be monitoring from the side stage. Press twice if you need anything. Dominic nodded, slipping the device in. Their eyes met briefly. His darkened intense, hers a calm amber that somehow steadied his racing thoughts. It was the closest thing to pre-show nerves he allowed himself. Ophelia, he said as she turned to leave. After tonight's success, take some time off. You haven't used a vacation day in 2 years. She tilted her head slightly, surprise flickering across her composed features. I'll consider it when we return to New York, she replied, though both knew she wouldn't. The presentation unfolded flawlessly. Dominic moved across the stage with the confidence of someone accustomed to reshaping industries. The Horizon Neural Bridge, a breakthrough allowing direct human-computer interface through non-invasive means, represented the culmination of 12 years' work. As he demonstrated the technology, gasps rippled through the audience. Stock prices were already climbing on early reports. This isn't merely an advancement, Dominic concluded, his voice carrying through the hushed auditorium. It's a bridge between human potential and technological capability, between limitation and possibility. Applause thundered through the convention center. From stage right, Ophelia watched with quiet pride. Unlike most in Dominic's orbit, she recognized the genuine desire to improve lives beneath his innovation, not just increase profits. This technology would revolutionize treatment for paralysis patients and communication disorders. Causes mentioned in none of the marketing materials but central to the research, from its earliest days. As the audience rose for a standing ovation, Ophelia's gaze drifted across the sea of faces. Most expressed awe or excitement, but one face near the back remained coldly impassive. The man's hand slipped inside his jacket in a motion that triggered something in Ophelia's subconscious. A security training session from years ago. She was moving before her mind fully processed the threat, her body cutting through the backstage area toward Dominic. Simultaneously, she pressed her communication device. Security alert, Section H, possible. The sound of the first shot cut through the applause. Screams erupted as attendees dove for cover. Dominic stood frozen for a millisecond, his brilliant mind still processing the shift from triumph to danger. Ophelia reached him just as the second shot came, her body colliding with his in a desperate tackle that sent them both crashing behind the presentation podium. Sharp pain blazed through her side as they hit the floor, Dominic's larger frame partly cushioning their fall. "Are you hit?" she gasped, already trying to shield him further despite the fire spreading through her ribcage. "I'm fine," Dominic answered, his usual controlled demeanor fractured by shock. Then his eyes widened, focusing on the darkening fabric at her waist. "You're bleeding." Security personnel swarmed the stage, creating a protective barrier around them. Through the chaos, Ophelia maintained her composure, though her face had gone alarmingly pale. "The neural interface prototype," she whispered, gripping Dominic's arm with surprising strength. "Secure it first." "Forget the prototype," Dominic snapped, pressing his hand against her wound as Trevor and 2 security guards reached them. For the first time in their professional relationship, the careful distance in his eyes had vanished, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. "Get her medical attention now!" As consciousness began to slip away, Ophelia found herself looking into Dominic's eyes, not the controlled gaze of a tech visionary, but the terrified stare of a man watching someone bleed for him. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was his voice, stripped of its usual measured tone, repeating her name like a desperate prayer. Vigil of Revelations. The private hospital room in Tokyo's most prestigious medical center had become Dominic's world for the past 3 days. The space was transformed by his presence, laptops and tablets scattered across every surface, half-empty coffee cups testament to sleepless nights, and a steady stream of specialists arriving at irregular hours. "Mr. Reed," Dr. Nakamura said, reviewing charts at Ophelia's bedside. "The surgery was successful. The bullet missed vital organs, but she lost significant blood. She needs rest. Whatever she needs, Dominic replied, not looking up from his screen where he monitored both Horizon's operations and the investigation into the shooting. Cost is irrelevant. When the doctor left, Dominic found himself alone with the unconscious Ophelia, studying her face as if seeing it for the first time. Without her characteristic alertness, she appeared younger, more vulnerable. Her dark hair spread across the pillow, free from its usual constraints. On her right wrist, a simple bracelet of wooden beads caught his attention, something he'd never noticed in 4 years of daily interaction. "Sir," Trevor said from the doorway, his usual easygoing manner subdued. "Tokyo police have the shooter in custody. Corporate espionage connected to neurosync technologies." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Their CEO was at the gala." "Front row," Trevor confirmed. But there's something else. The initial background checks on the shooter revealed communications with someone inside Horizon. "We're still tracing. Keep me updated." Dominic dismissed him with a gesture, his mind already processing implications, calculating possible betrayals within his company. Alone again, he reached for Ophelia's tablet, seeking contact information for her family. To his surprise, the device required his thumbprint. She had authorized him as a secondary user, a practical preparation he had never considered necessary. The tablet revealed a woman he barely recognized. Her calendar contained not only his schedule, but regular volunteer hours at a youth center in one of New York's struggling neighborhoods. Her photo gallery held architectural sketches, bridges and community spaces designed with elegant precision. A folder labeled Horizon Future Projects contained detailed proposals for company initiatives focused on accessibility and education. Most revealing was an email folder labeled simply Family. Sparse communications with an elderly aunt in Oregon, the only relative mentioned. There was a draft message about visiting during the holidays, never sent. As he scrolled, a notification appeared from someone named Jasper. The message read, "Any update on Reed approving the education initiative? The kids at Westside Center are counting on those computers." Dominic set down the tablet, a strange hollowness spreading in his chest. While he had built technological empires, Ophelia had quietly constructed a life of purpose beyond Horizon's walls, one he had never bothered to notice. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. An older Japanese nurse entered, bowing slightly. "You should rest," she said gently. "I will watch her." "I'm fine," Dominic replied automatically. The nurse studied him with unexpected directness. "She is important to you." It wasn't a question, but Dominic found himself answering anyway. "She's an exceptional employee." "Ah." The nurse nodded, changing Ophelia's IV with practiced efficiency. "In Japan, we have a concept called Kage no Kyoryokusha, the shadow supporter. One who holds no glory but makes achievement possible." She glanced meaningfully at Ophelia. Very rare to find one who would take a bullet. After she left, Dominic found himself confronting an uncomfortable truth. He had built his life and company around maintaining control and distance, yet this woman had willingly risked everything for him, not for Horizon Innovations or its stock price, but for him. On the morning of the 4th day, Ophelia's eyes finally fluttered open. They focused slowly on Dominic, who sat beside her bed reviewing security footage from the gala. "The prototype?" she asked, voice raspy from disuse. A surprised laugh escaped him, short and genuine. "That's your first question? Not, did we catch the shooter? Or how badly am I injured?" A faint smile touched her lips. "I assumed you handled those issues with your usual efficiency. Why did you do it?" The question emerged before he could apply his usual filters, raw with an emotion he rarely permitted himself. Ophelia's gaze held steady despite her weakened state. "It's my job to anticipate problems and protect Horizon's interests." "Horizon's interests don't include taking bullets," he countered, leaning forward. "That was never in your job description." She remained quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Some actions transcend job descriptions." "Mr. Reed." "Dominic," he corrected, the formality suddenly unbearable. "After what happened, I think we're past surnames." What neither said, but both understood in that moment was that something fundamental had shifted between them. A barrier breached not by professional success or shared ambition, but by blood spilled and a life willingly risked. Foundations rebuilt. 6 weeks after the Tokyo incident, Ophelia stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Dominic's penthouse office, watching late autumn sunlight glint off neighboring skyscrapers. Her hand unconsciously moved to her side, where the healing wound occasionally reminded her of how close the bullet had come. "The board is getting impatient," she said, turning to where Dominic sat reviewing documents. "They expected you back at full capacity weeks ago." "The board can wait," he replied without looking up. The neural interface launch was successful despite the interruption. Stock prices are stable. Since their return from Tokyo, subtle but significant changes had altered their professional rhythm. Dominic had moved her office adjacent to his own, eliminated half his meetings, and begun asking her opinion on matters beyond administrative details. Most surprisingly, he had started joining her for lunch. Awkward affairs at first. His attempts at personal conversation stilted after years of deliberate distance. "The West Side Youth Center proposal," Dominic said suddenly, sliding a folder across his desk. "I reviewed it last night. Implementation begins next week." Ophelia froze. "You found my draft proposal?" "On your tablet, yes." He met her startled gaze directly. "You should have presented it officially. The integration of tech education with architectural design instruction is innovative. It wasn't finished," she said carefully, "and it wasn't my place." "Not your place?" Dominic stood, unusually animated. "You've managed my entire life for 4 years. You took a bullet for me, yet you didn't think you could propose a project aligned with our company's stated values?" The sharpness in his tone wasn't anger, but something closer to regret, surprising them both. Before Ophelia could respond, his intercom buzzed. "Mr. Reed," his security chief's voice came through, "we've identified the internal leak connected to the Tokyo incident. It's Philip Verona from R&D. Dominic's expression hardened. "Bring me everything." After the call ended, he turned back to Ophelia. "I'd like you to join that meeting. Your perspective will be valuable." This new inclusion, being treated as a partner rather than support staff, still felt foreign to Ophelia. As she nodded her agreement, Dominic hesitated, then added, "I saw your architectural designs. They're exceptional." "A hobby," she said dismissively. "From before." "Before what?" "Before practicality required a more reliable career path," she offered a small smile. "Not everyone has your talent for turning vision into viable enterprise." Dominic studied her with the same intensity he usually reserved for complex problems. "And if you could pursue it now, with resources and support?" Before she could answer, Trevor arrived with a secure tablet containing evidence against Philip Verona. The conversation shifted to business, but the question lingered between them. Unspoken but not forgotten. 3 days later, Ophelia found herself standing in an empty warehouse in the neighborhood where she volunteered. Dominic had asked her to meet him there without explanation, uncharacteristic mystery from a man who valued direct communication. "What do you think?" he asked as she entered, gesturing to the vast space. "About an empty building?" she replied, confused. Dominic approached with something she rarely saw, uncertainty. He handed her a tablet displaying architectural renderings of the space transformed into a community center, with clear influences from her own designs. "Your West Side proposal mentioned inadequate facilities," he explained. "I purchased this building last week. The foundation will fund construction and operations for 10 years, after which it should be self-sustaining through the small business incubator on the 2nd floor. Ophelia stared at the plans, recognizing elements from sketches she'd created years ago. Graceful walkways connecting classroom spaces, natural light maximized through clever window placement, flexible areas adapting to community needs. "These are my designs," she whispered. "Integrated with practical considerations?" "Yes." For the first time in their acquaintance, Dominic appeared almost nervous. "You'll oversee the project, of course. I've arranged a sabbatical from your regular duties and enrolled you in an accelerated program to complete your architectural licensing." Ophelia looked up sharply. "You researched my background?" I should have years ago, he admitted. I've been... He paused, searching for words, a rarity for someone usually so precisely spoken. Focused on bigger priorities, she supplied. No. The firmness in his voice surprised her. I've been hiding. Behind work, behind horizon, behind artificial distance. It took nearly losing you to see it. The admission hung between them, vulnerable and honest in a way their relationship had never been. Ophelia's hand moved unconsciously to her healing wound, a physical reminder of the moment everything changed. Why this? She asked, gesturing to the plans. Why now? Dominic stepped closer, the careful distance he maintained with everyone noticeably absent. Because you saw me when I didn't want to be seen. Because you protected more than my life in Tokyo. You protected possibilities I hadn't even recognized. He hesitated, then added quietly, and because talent shouldn't be sacrificed for practicality, not when there's another way forward. In the empty warehouse that would soon become something new, Ophelia realized that Dominic wasn't simply offering a project or career opportunity, he was dismantling the walls he had built around himself, brick by careful brick, starting with the ones between them. Beyond gratitude. The Westside Community Center's grand opening drew crowds that spilled onto the sidewalk. What had once been an abandoned warehouse now stood as a gleaming example of functional beauty. Walls of reclaimed wood and glass creating spaces that flowed naturally from educational areas to community gathering spots to technology labs equipped with Horizon's latest innovations. Ophelia stood slightly apart from the celebration, watching children explore the buildings she had designed. After months of construction, seeing her vision materialize felt surreal, especially knowing that tomorrow she would return to Horizon Tower, resuming some of her former responsibilities while continuing to develop architectural projects for the foundation. Hiding from your admirers, Dominic appeared beside her, having slipped away from reporters eager to cover the tech billionaire's unexpected foray into community development. Observing, she corrected. The northeast corner gets better natural light than the simulations predicted. He followed her gaze, nodding in agreement. Always improving, even at the moment of triumph. Some habits transcend career changes. The easy camaraderie between them had developed gradually over the months since Tokyo. What began as awkward lunches had evolved into genuine connection. Dominic learning to share himself beyond professional necessity. Ophelia allowing him to see beyond her efficient exterior. Neither could precisely identify when appreciation had transformed into something deeper, but both recognized the change. The investigation concludes tomorrow, Dominic said, his tone shifting. Philip Verona's trial date is set. NeuroSync's CEO faces industrial espionage charges. Ophelia turned to study his face. You're still troubled. The initial attack targeted me specifically, he confirmed. But NeuroSync's CEO claims they only wanted the prototype delayed, not violence. Someone gave the shooter additional incentive. Before Ophelia could respond, Trevor approached with a tablet displaying an urgent message. Sir, the security team found something in the archived files. Communications between Verona and someone using encrypted channels, references to finishing what should have ended in London. Dominic's expression hardened. London, he repeated. 15 years ago. What happened in London? Ophelia asked. My first major innovation, he answered distantly, and the death of my former partner, Julian West. Later that evening, in Dominic's penthouse overlooking the city, he finally shared the story he had buried beneath years of success and isolation. Julian had been more than a business partner, a friend who believed in Dominic's vision when no one else did. Their breakthrough technology attracted attention from larger companies, including one run by Victor Hargrove, now on NeuroSync's board. The official report called it an accident, Dominic explained, pacing beside floor-to-ceiling windows. Julian's car went off a bridge the night before we were to sign with a major investor. I always suspected sabotage but couldn't prove it. So you built Horizon alone, Ophelia said softly, and kept everyone at a distance. Safer that way, he agreed. For everyone involved? And lonely, she added, the simple observation cutting through his practiced detachment. for everyone involved. The investigation ultimately revealed what Dominic had suspected for 15 years. Victor Hargrove had orchestrated both Julian's death and the Tokyo attack. The evidence Ophelia had helped uncover would finally bring justice, closing a chapter that had shaped Dominic's life and choices. 2 days after Hargrove's arrest, Dominic found Ophelia in the community center late at night, making adjustments to a classroom design. "The board approved your proposal," he said without preamble. "Horizon's new community development division launches next quarter, with you as director." She looked up, surprised. That was fast. They were impressed with both the concept and the projected returns. He settled into a chair beside her desk. "Though I suspect my threat to fund it personally if they refused may have influenced the vote." Ophelia laughed, a sound that had become less rare in recent months. "Throwing your weight around, Mr. Reed?" "How uncharacteristic." "Dominic," he corrected, as he had countless times since Tokyo. "And perhaps I'm developing new characteristics." The unspoken understanding between them had grown into something neither had anticipated, a connection forged in crisis but nurtured through shared purpose and gradually lowered defenses. "I've been considering Julian," Dominic said after a comfortable silence. "What happened to him was tragic, but my response, cutting myself off, building walls, dishonored what he valued most about our partnership." Which was, "Innovation requires human connection," Dominic quoted. His favorite saying. He met her eyes directly. "I forgot that until a bullet reminded me how quickly connections can be severed." Ophelia set aside her tablet, giving him her full attention. "And now?" "Now I find myself wanting to build something new," he said carefully. "Something not centered on technology or business, but on the understanding that some risks are worth taking." He reached across the distance between them, physical and otherwise, to take her hand. "If you're willing to take another chance on me." Ophelia's smile held no trace of her former professional reserve. "I believe some actions transcend risk assessment," she said, echoing words spoken months ago in a Tokyo hospital room. As their fingers intertwined, both recognized that what had begun with sacrifice had evolved into something neither had been looking for, but both now treasured. A connection built not on gratitude or obligation, but on the gradual discovery of each other beyond titles and roles. The barriers Dominic had maintained for protection had ultimately failed to protect him from the most transformative risk of all, allowing himself to be truly seen, and choosing to see others in return. In the building that represented both their visions, they began writing a new chapter neither had anticipated, one built on foundations stronger than success or ambition alone could provide.